Hey guys, I know a lot of you guys probably don't actually know who I am. For those of you who don't, my name is Murray. I've only lived here since about last May, I think, and I'm soon to be related to the Jernigans. I'm actually at their house right now. My apartment is not near as nice as this, but I was really excited to come talk to you guys at retreat, and really bummed that we didn't get the chance to do that because I would have liked to get to know a lot of you guys. But anyway, Tim asked me to do this and to kind of give you guys my version of the love to tell the story. And so I'm going to be focusing on my favorite story in the Bible, and it's kind of one that not everyone likes. A lot of people kind of point to it as a reason to not really buy into Christianity, as they like to say. But I'm going to be talking about Job. Job is one of the more poetic books of the Bible, which is probably why I like it. I've studied English for a long time, and I really enjoy it. So poetry is something that I really like. But the language in Job is really beautiful, and we're going to going quick through this, but I encourage you to read it on your own. It is some of the most powerful and beautiful imagery in the entire Bible. So, a lot of us know the general outline of the story of Job, but for those of you who don't, we'll go over it real quick. So, Job starts out in Job 1, and I'll read for you, and if you'd like to follow along, you're welcome to. So, in Job 1, we learn about who Job is. So in the very first 4 verses, we read, "There was a man in the land of Uz," or Uz, I've never been really sure how to say it, "whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. There were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 female donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East." So that's just kind of an overview of who Job is and how rich he is. He's considered the greatest man in the East. He's clearly accomplished a lot with his life. He has 10 children that he loves very much. And then we go on into the second half of this chapter, and this is the part of the story that most people know. So there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. This is in verse 6 going on. "The Lord said to Satan, 'From where have you come?' Satan answered the Lord and said, 'From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it.' And the Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, who fears God and turns away from evil?'" Now, we'll just pause right there. That is what I would dream of what God would say about me to Satan. Satan came into God's court, and God asked him, "Where have you been?" And he says, "I've just been walking to and from on the earth, observing everything." And then God to say about one person, individual, saying, "Have you seen this person? How great he is, how upright, how righteous he is." To know that God would speak about me in that way is something that I can't even imagine. I can't even think about how fantastic that would be. And we talk about, when the day that we get to go back to heaven, to go home, hearing the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And that would just be the greatest thing that any of us could imagine, is to hear from God, "Well done," and to be called a good and faithful servant. But here's someone who's still on earth, who still has time, and God is saying this man is blameless and upright. And that's just so powerful, and I think is what really sets in motion this next stuff. So we won't read all the verses, but in short, Satan says to God, "Well, isn't he only blameless and upright because you've been protecting him? You've given him everything. Why would he be anything but good?" And so he talks to God and says, let me on him. We'll see if he's still so blameless and upright after I get a hold of him. And God says, "All right, you're on." paraphrasing, and says, you can do what you like to him, don't touch his health, don't lay a hand on him. And Satan does, and in a very short time span, Job loses all of his wealth, all his possessions, and all 10 of his children. And all he's left with is his wife. And he does not curse God, but he does grieve, and he mourns, and he wonders why it's happening to him. But he doesn't curse God, which is all that Satan is trying to get out of this. And so then Satan goes back to God, and they talk, and God says he still hasn't done this. He's still blameless and upright. And Satan says, well, of course he is. I mean, he's still got his health. And so God says, all right, you can go, you can strike him with whatever you will, but don't kill him. He's got to live. And so Job he's covered in these boils, he's sick, he's not even recognizable by his friends when his friends come and see him. And so that's the next part of this, is his 3 friends, they come and they sit with Job, and they sit with him for a long time before any of them even say anything. Days pass, and no one says anything. They just weep with him. And then that's when you really start to get into the poetry of this and the real theological debates in this book. And it's a really heavy book. Job is, it's really a place where you need to go if you're someone who's into philosophy, or you're someone who's into why the morality of things exist. So Job is a really intense book because his friends are saying, you must have done something wrong. You must have did something that you didn't realize, because God doesn't punish the just. And Job replies very, very intensely. He says, God does. There are bad things that happen to good people, which is something that we struggle with a lot as people. I know I do. Sometimes it seems like the best people in the world have the worst luck. And so that's where this kind of starts to tie in to me. This is, me sharing my story with you guys through my favorite book in the Bible. Around the time that I was 19, 20 years old, I had a really, really, really bad time with anxiety. I had made some really, really bad... I wouldn't say that I made the worst choices as a young adult or a teenager, but there were definitely some times when I made ones that I should not have. And yeah, I think that's pretty natural. We'll all look back, and you guys will too when you're older, and you'll think, man, I shouldn't have done that. Or, man, that was something that I kind of regret doing. And there's nothing for it other than to realize that you're forgiven when you've asked for forgiveness and put it before God. But I was really struggling at the time with realizing that. And so I was stuck in this place of constant anxiety. I was having health scares because of some things that I'd done. And I kept thinking that I was really I started thinking that I was sick. And I also started thinking that there were other things that were going to just happen that deserved to happen to me. And it got to a point where it was really the best 10 seconds of my day I remembered was from the time I woke up, and I had 10 seconds where I just laid in bed. I always got up earliest. My 3 roommates would all be asleep, and I'd just have 10 seconds of quiet and peace. And then after that 10 seconds, I would hop off my bunk, my feet would hit the ground, and it was on for the rest of the day. I was struggling, I was anxious, I was worried. Every moment, I just felt like something was around the corner, and I couldn't really pinpoint it. I couldn't get why I couldn't get past it. And that was around the time that I really learned about what it meant to pray without ceasing. Because even if I wasn't praying, it felt like I was constantly just beseeching God to help alleviate this off of me. And I wanted so many times to just ask, why is this happening to me? Why can I not think rationally? Why can I not get past this? What is wrong with me? And what did I do to earn this? And that's where, as the story of Job continues, I kind of found my answer. Because as this goes on, Job still hasn't cursed God, but he's so upset, and he just calls on God, and he says he'd give him a talking to. He says he would tell him what to do, essentially. And that's when we get to Job 38. There's a big jump between the actual plot and how much is just being debated between friends, and then when you get to more actual plot. So in Job 38, and this is my favorite, these are my favorite favorite three verses in the entire Bible. Job 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. A whirlwind has come down and he's come to talk to Job. He's come to face him. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Dress for action like a man. I will question you, and you make it known to me." And then after that comes this beautiful, demanding statement from God. It says, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb, when I made clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band, and prescribed limits for it and set bars and doors and said, thus far you shall come and no farther, and here shall your proud waves be stayed." And it goes on, and God says all these things about commanding the morning, about telling the dawn where to be, placing the skirts of the trees on the earth, knowing everything from the single life of a mountain goat to things about the hail and snow stored up in heaven for the days of war. And God goes on, and he gets to the point that Job says, "I've spoken out of turn. I won't do it again." And God says, "No, you're going to hear me. And I'm going to tell you right now, you will never understand all that I do. But God says, you have still been a good and faithful servant." And he says, there's still no one like you, because he wouldn't curse him. And I think that it's very reassuring to me, even in a strange way, that Job gets confronted and berated kind of to a point by God, which I can't imagine anything more terrifying. But God says, it's okay. You haven't done wrong by questioning me, or by questioning who I am, I guess is the proper way to say it. You do need to trust in God, but it's okay to be frustrated when you don't understand God, because we can't understand God. And God says it's okay because you've still been faithful to me. And if you know the story of Job, Job gets everything back that he could and more. He has more children. He gets more wealth than he ever had. His health is restored. And he's still a great person. But what really stands out when you read into the last couple chapters of Job, God never explains to Job what happened. God never says to Job, well, look, Satan came and we were talking and I said all these great things about you, and then I didn't do any of this. I didn't hurt you. I just let him do this. God didn't say any of that to Job. And for all we know, Job never knew while he was on earth. And I think that's very key, is that God is worthy of our praise. Definitely, without a doubt. The list of things that he knows and that he's done is proof enough of that. And so he's worthy of our praise, but God does not owe us anything. God didn't owe us Jesus, and God doesn't owe us an explanation for when things go bad. But he'll always be there. And he said, what's so beautiful to me about Job is that God says, you don't know me in a way that could allow you to understand why I do or why I allow everything to happen. But I'm not holding it against you for wondering. And I'll always be there. And I'll always love you after this. Even though he gets so stern and so intense with Job, he still says Job has been his servant and still shows his love to Job. And that is so powerful to me. And so for my story, when I was just besieged by anxiety and worry, to know that God is not really going to ever give me an explanation, at least while I'm on earth. And maybe not even when I get to heaven. But it's not for me to know. But it is for me to trust God. And sometimes it might be scary, and sometimes it might be hard to do because I don't understand God. Not completely. And none of us ever will. But none of us have ever gone through what Job did. And to know that there was a servant that endured some of the worst treatment that is ever imaginable was still called such a good servant helped calm my anxiety and worries, and I was able to find peace. And it took time and it took good practice, but God is not punishing us for worrying or for wondering why bad things happen, but He is going to be there throughout it, and He is always going to be higher than any of our worry. So I love the story of Job because it shows God's power and shows God who, kind of just a glimpse of who He is, while also telling us you're never going to really know all of it. But you have to be okay with that because He's okay with you being frustrated with not knowing all of it. And to me, that is just the most powerful thing. And it's something that really helped me as a young person. I like to think I'm still young. I just go to bed really early. But it's something that has really empowered me, is knowing that I question things all the time. But God has said, where were you when I set the stars in the sky? And that, to me, is just enough. That's enough to know the creator of the universe cares for me. The person who did all these things, I can get through anything. So that's all I've got for you guys. Sorry if I went over or if it was long. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you read the book on your own. I really would just encourage it. Job is such an intense and such a beautiful book. I think it's worth anybody's time. So again, sorry I couldn't meet you guys at the retreat. Hope to meet a lot of you guys soon. If you ever see me at church or out and about, say, hey, Murray, what's up? And then feel free to critique my lesson all you like. All right, well, hopefully I'll see you guys soon. And till then, stay safe. Go with God. Love you guys.